Welcome back to On the Middle East, Al Monitor's flagship podcast on the big and interesting stories in the region. My name is Amrin Zaman, and today I'll be discussing the Defence Cooperation Agreement that was signed earlier this month between the United States and Cyprus, the contested Mediterranean island that is strategically positioned at the intersection of Europe and the Middle East. The 5-year deal marks the island's shift away from Russia. However, Turkey accuses Washington of abandoning its neutral stance on Cyprus. The island has since 1974 remained ethnically divided between the internationally recognized Republic of Cyprus that is led by the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus that is recognized solely by Turkey. UN-led talks to reunite the island, where Turkey has thousands of troops, have yielded no results. With us here to discuss US-Cypriot rapprochement and why Turkey is so alarmed by it is Zenonas Cyrus, a lecturer in the Department of Turkish and Middle Eastern Studies at Cyprus University. Welcome to our program, Zenonas. I'm so pleased that you could join us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Aberin. It's very good to be with you.
So, Zenonas, tell us what this defense cooperation agreement entails and why Turkey is so upset by it.
Yeah, well, I guess before getting into the deal itself, it's good to provide some background because it did not come out of nowhere, right? So over the past few years, you have noticed that relations between the United States and Greece, as well as Cyprus, have improved greatly. And this is particularly important in the case of Cyprus because obviously Greece is a NATO member and a good US partner. So I believe that there are certain factors that contributed to that. One being, for example, the diminishing of Russian influence in Cyprus, especially after the 2013 bail-in that took place in Cyprus because of the financial crisis, which led many Russian capitals and presidents in Cyprus to flee. There's a lot of sanctioning went on and so on. That was one component. The other one was the increasing deterioration of US-Turkey relations, which came with improved Turkey-Russian relations. And that obviously created problems in US foreign policy in the region. So the Cyprus government thought that it was a good opportunity to exploit, to jump on the bandwagon of the United States, so to speak. And we usually do that as a country. We try to see which other actors in the international system, be it states or companies sometimes, can support our geopolitical endeavors. And it was almost a natural decision because as we moved away from Russia, the United States became much more important. And it was also a time when all those trilateral partnerships were going on in the Eastern Mediterranean, like Greece, Cyprus, Israel, as well as Egypt and Jordan and so on. Later on came the Abraham Accords. So what was going on from the United States perspective was an effort to establish a pro-Western security architecture in the broader region that would counter both Russian, Chinese, and Iranian malign influences, as the State Department calls them. So it was a very good opportunity for Cyprus to take. And the United States was open, Nicosia was open, and this started getting better and better, especially since 2018. A number of agreements took place in the security sector as well. We had the Cyclops Center established with American money in Cyprus in terms of training and so on. And this latest deal is also along the similar lines, focusing on training, exchange of intelligence, looking at how they could maintain the lifting of the arms embargo that was recently lifted, but has to be reviewed every year. So that's a hassle, and they're looking into how they could just keep it open and keep being able to provide material support to the Cypriot military and so on. So it's basically, and let me close with this. It's basically a very common deal that goes on between partner states. It's not really a defense agreement, because when we talk about defense agreement, we usually refer to agreements like the one between Greece and France, for example, that include mutual defense clauses, right? Like Article number 5 of the NATO Charter. And this is nothing like that. So it's a very simple, a very common deal, and to be honest, the whole hassle around it, the whole fuss around it, doesn't really make any sense.
Well, of course, it's happening against the backdrop of several things. One, as you mentioned, the deteriorating relationship between Turkey and the United States. Also, the deepening relationship between Greece and the United States, and the conflict in Israel, which is something that Turkey has been focusing on when it's been criticizing this deal, claiming that Cyprus is serving as some kind of forward base for US operations, military assistance to Israel that helps the war effort against Gaza. What would you say to that? Is there any merit to that claim, or is this just being fabricated by Turkey?
Well, it looks to me entirely fabricated, especially because there's nothing in the deal that would even suggest something like that. Also, as I said before, this deal is not something that came out of thin air. It's like the culmination, if you will, of a process in the relations between Cyprus and the US. So it's not like this happened because of the war in Gaza. It's just it happened despite of the war in Gaza, and happens to take place at the same time as the war. So, and I understand and realize that there is tension between Turkey and Israel right now because of what's going on in Gaza, and that's understandable. But and I also understand that in the past few years, there has been tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean between Turkey and other regional states, which contributes to this, maybe misperception or tendency to inflate developments like these. But at the same time, I wouldn't expect Israel to have any sort of involvement in what's going on between Cyprus and Turkey, or Greece and Turkey, because I also hear some weird opinions that Israel might join Greece in a potential conflict with Turkey, and stuff like that are entirely crazy going on in the public sphere, let's say. And I was recently asked about Turkish colleagues about these sort of scenarios. So I understand that there's a lot of ideas and opinions going on in Turkey, maybe media or whatever, and it doesn't help the whole atmosphere of what's going on. But yeah,
Just sorry to jump in there, but there are
please.
these 2 British bases in Cyprus, right? And those bases have been used for decades for numerous purposes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the United States and Great Britain are the closest allies.
Sure.
So have they used those bases at all for Gaza during this conflict for any purpose?
Well, to be very honest, I'm not aware that they have. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. What I know is that they have been used multiple times over the past, I don't know, let's go back even to the Gulf War, right? And especially also the fight against ISIS and so on. So it's nothing unusual. Also, the government of Cyprus doesn't have any control over what's going on in the bases, because there's sovereign British bases. Britain controls
And that's
what's going on
a
there.
great point of contention, right? I mean, there's always like the part of the Greek public, or the Cypriot public, that is quite exercised about this, right? Particularly on the left.
Yes, exactly. Of course, I totally get the point that through this deal or other deals, the United States wants to increase its influence in the area, and that's definitely the case. One, to, as I said, to counter influences that that they consider malign, and two, to find alternatives that would serve and accommodate their strategic interests. Provided, I mean, given that Turkey has been recently a difficult ally.
Well, of course,
Many
on
have
top of
argued.
that, sorry to interrupt again, but
No,
as you
go on,
said,
please.
it's a sovereign base, so they don't need to seek, you know,
A
permission.
new one.
Even if they do, it's pro forma, right? It's, I mean, British are not
Yes.
going to say no to the Americans, whereas at Incirlik, they have to jump through so many hoops each
Mm-hmm.
time. And yeah, so.
Well, I would get the point more about, let's say, the ports, not so much about airports, but maybe Cypriot ports can prove helpful for the American fleet and so on. So that's a point that can be made. But even so, this has nothing to do with Turkey itself. It's even if Americans end up using Cypriot ports, this will not be against Turkey. It will be about their operations, humanitarian and otherwise, in the area. So the idea that US, Greece, and Cyprus are teaming up against Turkey is at least ridiculous, given that Cyprus is not a NATO member and Turkey is. Not just any NATO member, is the second biggest military in NATO. And they have a very close strategic partnership despite the problems in multiple areas, including Iraq, Syria, the Black Sea, Ukraine, and so on and so forth. So, well, yeah.
Well, I think it speaks partly to history and this traditional paranoia about Greece, about Cyprus, and each
Mm-hmm.
time they see the United States improving, developing relations with their enemies, perceived enemies, they get very spooked. That's how it's playing out in northeast Syria, where the Americans are working together with the Kurdish forces there. But
Mm-hmm.
going forward, can't we actually, if we're Turkish, hail this deepening US involvement in Cyprus by way of being able to project its positive impact on the resolution of the Cyprus conflict? Because the more American involvement, the more American leverage, perhaps going forward, I'm not sure. And they could play, maybe play a role in reviving these talks that seem to be really stuck.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you, as I said before, the Cypriot perspective is that any bigger power that gets involved in Cyprus in some way has the potential of contributing to the resolution of the problem. However, I'm not sure that Turkey right now considers the Americans an honest broker, or recognizes any kind of significant leverage on the part of the Americans when it comes to the conflict. I mean, the statements coming from the Turkish government speak volumes to the antagonistic way that Turkey looks at things. And I'm not sure that the Americans could actually, at this point in time, have any meaningful impact. Many people have discussed about how the Americans could potentially have a role similar to what they had in the Israel-Lebanon maritime deal, but that could potentially happen. But the Cyprus problem is so much more complicated than that. The sovereignty aspect of the issue, which is attached to the maritime zones, is also very complicated, and you have all this energy factor in that. So it's very difficult for anyone to accomplish such a deal in the absence of a more comprehensive, let's say, solution to the problem. I mean, you cannot simply attack the energy or maritime aspect of the problem without touching other more fundamental aspects. And I'm not sure that either the Cypriots are ready for something like that because they see that scenario as solidifying the division instead of bridging it. And I'm not sure that the Americans have the leverage to provide something like that right now.
Final question. I mean, however much Cyprus is a member of the European Union and a European country, it's also very Middle Eastern in many ways, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
And how does this deepening relationship with the United States influence Cyprus's relations with its traditional Arab partners?
Well, it depends which Arab partners we're talking about, right? So obviously, there are certain Arab partners or neighbors that don't see the US in the same way. I guess Cyprus is viewed as a player that could be a bridge builder. At least that's what I get from discussions with other colleagues from the region. But I'm not sure that Cyprus is actually seen as a player that um, that can reach its full potential right now, because there are many weaknesses when it comes to in terms of capacities and capabilities of the Cyprus Republic. You know, it's a small state. It has its own problems to deal with. The region is so complicated. Turkey is a big issue. European Union is a good support, but at the same time, the government feels like it's fighting a battle within the EU when it comes to Turkey-European relations as well. So Cyprus wants to punch above its weight in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East, but I feel like it's failing to some extent to
That's
achieve that.
interesting, because I guess the point I was trying to make, that this perhaps bolsters Cyprus and elevates Cyprus in the eyes of the regional countries, which are mainly Arab.
Well, yes, you're right. I would say that what I described has been the picture so far, but the involvement of the US and perhaps a different approach when it comes to the relationship with the EU as a provider of capacities, capabilities, and resources might change that scene. But I'm not sure how impactful it can really be, because again, it has to do with domestic politics in Cyprus and how much we are willing to play certain roles, how much we are capable to play certain roles. But what we can definitely say is that this whole thing, at least in terms of what can be seen ostensibly, let's say, changes the geopolitical weight that Cyprus has in the Eastern Mediterranean. Whether that's
appear that way, but as you say,
yeah.
it's a democracy. Cyprus is a democracy, and people have been traditionally, I would say, quite anti-American and very pro-Palestinian in Cyprus.
Also correct, yes.
And so how that plays out will be very interesting. But certainly something of a game changer, this deal, in terms of perceptions, and certainly
Yes,
how it's perceived in Ankara. But do people, I guess I have one more final question.
Sure.
Final question. I mean, do people feel more secure now vis-a-vis Turkey?
Well, that's a very good question. I think we became a bit more cynical about these things over the years, because in the past we saw Russia as a security provider, and then we saw the European Union, as a security provider, and then we thought that discovering energy reserves might be a security provider, and all these international companies coming in. All those security providers failed us as far as we're concerned. So we're not sure that the United States can really be a game-changing force in this respect. We welcome it, obviously, but I think we have mitigated expectations as to what this can achieve. Because I should just another footnote to this, I should mention that as a society, we do have an identity crisis, and we're not sure where we belong. Is it the West? Is it the East? Is it Europe? Is it the Middle East? Is it Israel? Is it the Arab states? So this also sort of confuses not only us, but also the behavior that we have in the region. And sometimes it confuses our partners as well.
But bottom line, Cyprus is beautiful, has great beaches.
Oh, yes, please
And
do
we'll
visit.
always want to keep coming. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I look forward to reading more of your great commentary.
Cheers. Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. Please join us again as I continue to host more interesting guests. And meanwhile, don't forget to visit our website, www.al-monitor.com, for in-depth and independent reporting on the Middle East. Thank you and goodbye.